Enter, rejoice, and log in. Enter, rejoice, and log in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and log in.
The chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. If you have a chalice or candle at home, it is now time to light it together as we say the same words we say each week at our fellowship.
We're the Barron kids, and we're going to be lighting the chalice for this week.
We light this flame as a symbol of new life, enlightening our way, as a symbol of the warmth in every human heart. Let the light of this flame rekindle the inner light of hope, of peace, of love. May we share that light with all people.
Good morning. I am Marie Luna, your Director of Congregational Life. Thank you for welcoming us into your home today. It is good to be together, even when we have to be physically apart. If you are joining us from another Unitarian Universalist congregation, welcome. If you are visiting the fellowship for the first time today, I want to extend you a special welcome. I encourage you to reach out to find more about our fellowship. I am happy to help you get connected here. I will put my email address in the chat box, and I hope that you reach out. Today's service is being led and supported by Mark Marnaka, our lay worship leader, Kim Hartman, our Director of Religious Education, Reverend Leah Angiri, our Associate Minister, Steve Seek, our Music Director, our wonderful musicians and singers, and Adam Robinson, our audiovisual tech. I am so grateful to all who made this morning service possible. This year, we are focusing on growing resilience. We are digging in to what it means to grow ourselves and our community, to be sources of life, even when things get tough. Sometimes when things get tough, we feel anxiety and instability. An exercise you can use in these times is to orient yourself. This can be as simple as, who am I? Where am I from? This can also include the land that you are currently on. You may consider this day, the last Sunday before a new year. You may consider the people you connect with, both current and ancestor. Here is my orientation on this day. My name is Marie Luna. My ancestors came from Norway, Germany, and Switzerland. I currently live on what was Menominee land. The Menominee Indian tribe's rich culture, history, and residency in the area, now known as the state of Wisconsin, and parts of states of Michigan and Illinois, dates back 10,000 years. I am connected to this place through the fellowship community and my son, Nate. On this day, I continue to isolate until it is safe for us to be together. I look forward to hugs, sharing music, and sacred circle. I now invite you to orient yourself. Feel free to share in the chat box if you would like.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be one. May we be filled with loving kindness.
Good morning. Each of us, no matter our age or stage in life, is always on a journey. Our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles call us to a free and a responsible search for truth and meaning, and so we take time when we gather each week to hear stories and explore ideas in new ways. Wondering is an important skill for Unitarian Universalists because it allows us to keep our minds open throughout our lives and to always search for what truth and meaning means for each of us. Well, today I have the Wonder Box, and I'm wondering if you have an idea of what's inside. If you'd like to guess what's in here, go ahead and type it in the chat box so we can see and enjoy all of the different answers that everyone gives. Okay, are we ready to find out? Let's take a look. It's a star. One of the things that I like about looking at the night sky is, of course, seeing the moon and the stars. I like to think about how they have been there for billions of years and how they're going to continue on even after I'm gone. I like to think about them as being little bridges or connections that I have with people that I've lost, or people that I love who are far away, or people that I never knew but who I admire. So, people like my grandpa, who I loved so much but who died when I was 9 years old, or my friend who lives far away in New York, or my favorite artists, Vincent van Gogh and Frida Kahlo, and the dinosaurs. All of us have looked up and shared this very same sky. When life gets hard like it has been this past year and it feels so unpredictable, it's really helpful for me to find ways to help me stay centered, ways to keep myself grounded. One of these for me is to look at the night sky because it's an ever present constant that reminds me of my connection to all things and my place within the interconnected web of life. The children's book, The Stars Will Still Shine, by Cynthia Ryland and illustrated by Tiffany Beek, expresses this beautifully. This new year, the sky will still be there. The stars will still shine. Birds will fly over us. And church bells will chime. Cows will have calves. Kittens will sleep. Flowers will bloom. It's a promise they keep. We shall have peaches. We shall have pie. We shall have ice cream 3 scoops high. Homes will be cozy and homes will be warm. We'll curl up together when the rain makes a storm. And in this new year, love will be strong, growing and growing all the days long. There will be goodness. There will be grace. There will be light in every dark place. The sky will still be there. The stars will still shine. Birds will fly over us. Church bells will chime. So As we enter the final week of this year, let's remember to look for the things that keep us grounded as we step into the unpredictability and certainty of our new year.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
There are two readings for today. The first is entitled, The Old Year Runs Away from Me by Joyce Rupp. The old year runs away from me. I hang onto her sleeve, but she shakes me loose. Where does the old year go when the new year comes? She slips away into memories, falls into the crevices of wishes and ought to have dones. She waits no longer upon promises, turns her back on what might have been. The elves of the old year step in, pack up the struggles, store the joys, tuck them away in the bulging box, spreading out on the psyche's floor. It's up to the new year now. I bring a lot to her domain, expectations, dreams, hopes, and I place them all before her strong, abundant door. I walk into her untamed territory with a meek apprehension and a vast sense of mystery, assured by the welcome I receive, behind the drawn window shade, curious about what I will discover in the hidden folds of her new days. The second reading is by Lynn Unger called Keeping Faith. It's hard these days to know what to believe in. I still pray to goodness, truth, and mercy, but I am starting to suspect there are stronger gods and war brewing on the mountain. Hope is still in the pantheon, but optimism slunk off a while back. Joy and her sister Delight still come around, and I leave the door open as I can. But sometimes it's hard for the soul to keep faith, and I'm trying to listen behind its high, anxious whine to prayers of the flesh. Tea, says the body, rain, lavender, red leaves, pie.
Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
mosquitoes know I love you? Can I love me just as much? I had breakfast with my shadow, and we had quite the discussion. Can you fall in love with the things you only know, the things that you may never touch? Day at work was just like it always is, the same old, same old. I appreciate the opportunity over and over. And I had supper with my shadow, and we had quite the discussion. If I truly believe that things can change, will I wake up to something different?
We have remodeled our hours and days and months this pandemic year of 2020. We have sealed off many powerful parts of our lives, our live presence on teams, in choirs, or at conventions of honored colleagues, in congregations who carry much of our histories, and at the tables once reserved and set for holidays with our generations of family. We have of necessity gloved and masked before mandatory early morning expeditions to Woodman's or Fleet Farm, seeking sustenance for our little farm and our generations of family and our diverse critters. The pandemic restrains us and also confronts us with how we may hurt ourselves or others via bad choices. Thus, we have learned a long time ago as parents and as coworkers to be careful for others on projects of care and ideals as caregivers of the vulnerable. But there is now an impoverishment, a question of how to stay in love with those parts of deep living that we know well, but have not been able to touch for a long time. Perhaps we may now do better with vaccines dispatched to communities throughout our world. Yet gaining some resistance to the virus is distinct from regaining strong contact with the people, places, and hearts that we had once depended upon and also nurtured. There will be a point when we will have perhaps daily lists of ritual visits, very conscious plans for pilgrimages to places and spaces from which we have been detached, and a release of emotions and gestures and touches that have been constrained or digital or virtual. As Cloud Cult has asked, if I truly believe that things can change, will I wake up to something different? Recovery of our prior world and its richness may be akin to the recovery of sobriety and sanity after the pandemic's numbness and limitations. After a year in cosmic quarantine, there may well be a period of practice and of opening up what we had closed down, something of a spiritual rehab to strengthen the heart and muscles of reconnections. Some months ago, I had meditated on the great afterword that would follow the pandemic, someday, sometime. However, it appears, as we might assume, that the world's hurts and injustices do not yet have a vaccine, nor will they heal even as we may regain our spiritual sustenance. The world's pain and fallenness will perhaps be even more evident as we open our arms and hearts free of COVID. There have been emotional injuries and financial ruination during the pandemic, and such afflictions bring into greater concern and contrast the maltreatment of persons on the bases of race, ethnicity, gender identity, and disability. Though we now have many messages of gratitude to our healthcare professionals and our first responders, they remain outnumbered, overwhelmed, and underappreciated. Perhaps some of the youth of the COVID era may feel called to pursue healthcare careers and other community service and justice efforts based on the importance of such professions and efforts as portrayed in regular news coverage. Even beyond healthcare, there is the wider call to heal our communities and the ruptures, even the wounds to our social and political fabric. The poet Mary Oliver writes about how to find joy and balance it against such wounds. Don't hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Finally, some words from Howard Thurman, African-American minister and theologian who advised Martin Luther King. He has words for this very season. The work of Christmas, when the song of angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to make peace among the brothers, to make music in the heart. Thus, we are called and quieted. May you reach out, touch, and love again and again.
Almost a year ago, on New Year's Eve, I created a vision board for myself with a friend. I had no idea what was about to come, and I don't know about you, but 2020 has not been the year I had envisioned for myself. Instead, I spent my days inside my house, staring at this laptop screen and doom scrolling, trying to stay on top of the world's changing news and how my community is coping. This has been a year of loss and grief for many of us. Our relationships have been cut off. We're reckoning with injustice everywhere, and our rhythm of life has been disrupted. There have been big losses. Many have lost their lives. Many have lost their livelihoods. There have been countless small losses, celebrations, hugs, travel. We have all had to go through a year like none other. As a spiritual tradition, we talk about grief. We have sacred rituals around loss and death. Entire services are dedicated to this topic. We share publicly and personally about our individual sorrows, and we come together when there are shared traumatic events. And yet, this pandemic has gone on longer than most of us have thought possible, and we haven't been able to come together to share in the many types of losses unique to this particular shared experience. And yet, we have had Zoom and Google Meet and FaceTime, even YouTube and Facebook Live. So many platforms trying to help us get those connections that we need. Some of us are saying no to all of the technology and waiting until it is over. Others are digging in deeply, showing up for everything, no matter what the topic, to get any connection possible. And most of us are in the middle, finding meaning in a few things, but not trying to replicate everything that came before we had to lock down. I am one of those in the middle folks. I don't enjoy some of my quote unquote normal activities through a screen. So I am waiting for those to return in the after. The after. Sometime in this next year, I am very hopeful we will start living our lives out in the world again. One of the things that will help get me through this winter is thinking about and planning for what that will look like. But for right now, I want to lift up some of the highlights, the good and the bad, of my 2020, and I invite you to consider some of your own. Usually when we say highlight, we mean the good stuff that we brag about at the end of the year letter that goes out to family and friends. But what if instead we expand highlight to mean anything important or meaningful? The stuff worth lifting up and whatever we want to let go of. So some of the things that I would like to lift up from my 2020 include the following. Getting to eat lunch with my son Nate almost every day, and being able to just see him and chat with him often throughout his school day. We have watched a lot of Star Trek, Next Generation, and almost all of the Marvel movies together during this time. And I know that the amount of time that we have been able to spend together will likely never happen again. I have newfound appreciation for those who work on the front lines. I didn't even know what that term would come to mean last January. And I am so grateful for their work, and I try to show my appreciation every time someone brings me my groceries or takeout to my car. I have been able to stay home. I am grateful that I can keep myself and those in my very tiny bubble safe by not having to take risks. I truly love my home. I love those that I spend these days with, mostly Nate and our cat, and our good internet, which allows us to both work and watch a lot of Netflix. I have kept my job. I have been able to work from home since the beginning, and there will not be any pressure to go back to the building until I feel safe. I am incredibly fortunate. I also have many things that I would like to let go of from this year. In February, right before we understood what was happening, I traveled to the southern border for the second time to witness and protest what is happening to those seeking asylum in the United States. Once the pandemic hit, there was little energy to devote to this important and sacred work, and I want to let go of the guilt of not spending time on this cause. I want to let go of the worry I have felt almost every day of getting sick, of worrying about my friends who are high risk, of worrying that those in this community who have gotten sick will not recover fully, worrying that those who are in healthcare are more burdened by people's choices than they should have to be. I let go of the anxiety that I wake up with, not knowing what might have happened overnight that was newsworthy. I let go of the grief I feel of not being able to do the job that I love, My favorite parts of my job are Sunday morning, UU 101 classes, and sharing meals. Hugs. Seeing a newcomer walk into the building for the first time and say to them, I don't believe we've met. Introducing those same newcomers to our amazing welcomers. Seeing the kids leave their religious education classrooms and making a beeline for the cookies in the fellowship hall. Chatting with the coffee makers in the kitchen and getting a fillip of hot water for my tea. I could keep going because this has been a big year in a lot of ways. I have seen so much love and compassion during this year. The amount of people supporting each other has been awe-inspiring. People have given their time to help others vote. They have given their money. I have seen this here at the fellowship because we have had people asking for help and many offers of help. Meals, deliveries, help with dog walking, companionship, and much more. This has been a year that many of us have said yes to something we would not have in other circumstances. The humanity has been beautiful. The inhumanity has also been very present with us this year. I don't need to explain what I mean because you already know. There are unfortunately countless examples, big and small. And yet I am grateful to be part of a faith and part of a faith community that sides with love and yells, no more. We believe in science and our seventh principle that says that we respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. This means we do our part of keeping each other safe and healthy because we know we are all connected. We may not do this perfectly and we may make mistakes, but that is our goal. So now we are greeting a new year. Paganism, my own faith path, encourages us to ritualize this. We will always be impacted by what has happened, but possibilities exist too. I read this recently. Every ending is followed by a beginning. Nothing in life, no matter how painful or challenging, is wasted when you exercise the magic of discernment. Ask yourself, what purpose did this event in my life serve? Why did I make the choices I made? What can I learn from what I have gone through? Find the answers and everything changes. In my own life, my ritual is digging into these questions and determining what I want to manifest or bring in to my life and what no longer serves me. If this would be meaningful for you, I invite you to consider the highlights of your 2020. And again, we're not talking about just the positives here, but what has defined your life this past year? Write them down, release them in some way. Then consider what you hope for in 2021. Now, of course, January 1st is only one of many possible New Years that we can celebrate, but it is one that many find meaning. At the beginning of this sermon, I talked about how we as a faith community talk about grief and loss and challenge. One of my favorite services on this topic was one that Reverend Leah led back in 2015 called Tear Soup. It helped me frame some of the grief that I have had in my life, particularly around my grandpa's death. He died when I couldn't be with him in ways that I wanted to be. And the grief has always been tinged with guilt. I want to share the story with you, as it might be a helpful way for you to consider the grief and loss that has happened this year, personally and collectively. The service was adapted from a storybook by the same name. It is a story about an old and somewhat wise person called Grandy, who had to figure out how to make peace with the sad parts of life. She faced her loss by making tear soup, a custom many had forgotten. The story tells us, as people's lives became more rushed, they found it much easier to pull soup in a can from the shelf and heat it on the stove. But several years ago, Grandy got a taste of well-seasoned tear soup. One of her friends had made it from scratch after her child died. As soon as Grandy tasted the rich flavor of that carefully made soup, she promised herself never again to assume that quicker was better. One of my favorite parts of this story says, she put on her apron because she knew it would get messy. It seems that grief is never clean. People feel misunderstood, feelings get hurt, and wrong assumptions are made all over the place. To make matters worse, grief always takes longer to cook than anyone wants it to. The end of the story tells us that we don't think you actually ever finish grieving the big things. Grandy says, I've learned that grief, like a pot of soup, changes the longer it simmers and the more things you put into it. And most importantly, I've learned that there is something down deep within all of us, ready to help us survive the things we think we can't survive. So maybe your ritual will include making tear soup. My tear soup acknowledges that I grieve people that I haven't been able to be with this year. But it also includes the visions I had for my year back on New Year's Eve. If one of the areas you think about putting energy into is this fellowship and our community, I hope you will reach out to me for support. One possibility that I hope everyone considers is a 6-part class Allie Peters, our intern minister, is leading called Coming of Age for Adults. Our high school youth participate in Coming of Age, and many of us adults wish we had had that opportunity. Because, after all, we come of age again and again in our lifetimes. It starts in January and is listed in the Weekly Scroll newsletter and on our website. Our service today is a sort of review of the year. Coming of age is the best kind of life review. It gives us a chance to take stock of what we might want to lift up and what we might want to let go of. Most of us have some idea or experience we don't want to guide our spiritual lives, and examining this closely and in community is a great way to let go of it if it no longer serves it. It could be just what you need in 2021. There are, of course, many ways of connecting here and developing friendships. Please let me know how I can help you. So friends, 2020 has been hard, really, really hard. I hope that you spend some time considering what impacts this has had on you and give some space to what will come in the new year.
Sharing our individual joys and concerns is a practice that helps us collectively to grow resilience. I invite you now to type into the chat box any personal news you might wish to share. Together we are stronger, never invincible, but hopefully anchored with one another, by one another, able to offer each other shelter from the storm in the form of hope and support. If you might like to borrow some strength from a listening ear, please let me know. I would be happy to make myself available or to connect you with Reverend Christina, our intern minister, Allie, or a member of our care team. Any joys and concerns you might like to submit via our website or by emailing me, we will be happy to include in our weekly email. If you would like to subscribe to that email, please contact our office. Together we breathe, Together we sing. But first, some silence.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
Each week, we take time for generosity, remembering that the acts of giving and receiving are spiritual practices. As always, if you are in need of financial or emotional support, please reach out to any of our ministers, Reverend Christina, Reverend Leah, or Allie, so they can offer help, including modest financial support through the minister's discretionary fund. For those who are feeling relatively more financially secure, we want to thank you for continuing to give and ask you to keep doing so. We are grateful for all of the ways that people continue to give here at the fellowship and keep this fellowship a strong community.
Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Douch, and I have been a member here for 21 years. That's hard to believe. But this last year, 2020, it's a year like we've never experienced before. 2020 was a hard year. I got sick in 2020, which is why I'm here to talk to you today, because the fellowship was really there for me, and I wanted to share it with you. If you recall, when the pandemic first hit around here, things started shutting down. The fellowship was on it. They were on it immediately to find ways to keep us connected, ways to keep the services going, the small groups going, even though it was through Zoom or whatever. And they initiated groups to help reach out and keep everyone connected, to check in on people. Well, I was in one of those groups. I was in a group that made phone calls to people to check in on them, to see how they were, to be a representative for the Unitarian Universalist Church, and just ask, how are you? Is everyone in your family okay? Do you need anything? Can you get out and grocery shop, or do you need somebody to do it for you? Do you need a phone call from a lay minister to talk to? Do you need even financial assistance? People were blown away that the fellowship cared so much about everybody individually to make personal phone calls, and I was too. And that was the goal, to call every single person, to miss no one. As fate would have it, I ended up getting sick, and I got a first-hand opportunity to see that the fellowship walks its talk. Because let me tell you, as soon as they found out I was sick, I had meals set up for me. I had people offer to go to the grocery store, to go to the drugstore and pick up my inhalers. And the ministers and the lay ministers here, they kept in touch. They didn't lose track of me. Periodically, I got a phone call or an email or a card from one of them reaching out to me, asking how I was. Am I getting better? Am I doing okay? Is there anything more that I need? They're still there. They can still help. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was a first-hand view of the circle of love that goes on here at the fellowship. like goes on in a family. From ministers who care enough about each individual person, spreading it to others who can reach out so that no one gets excluded, and to the volunteers then who actually make the meals, who do the shopping. It's a circle that goes around and it never stops. And there is no way to describe it except that it feels like family. Well, I want to report to you that I am healthy now. I am well, I am recovered, and I can't wait to go back to the fellowship, to see you all, to hug you. I miss that so much. I know it's going to be a little bit before we get to do that, but I also know that those wonderful leaders at our fellowship, they're still there. I'm still here. You're still there. We're all still here. We're all still connected because we're family. Love you.
As we extinguish this flame, let us go our ways with hope in our hearts, with our spirits renewed, and with a deeper understanding of life's mystery. Let us carry the light of compassion and commitment to build a better world.
After our closing words, we will be having small breakout groups just like usual for 15 minutes of connection and conversation. In a moment, we will hear a short postlude song. If you do not want to participate in small group conversations, then please use that postlude music time to log off and leave this Zoom meeting. If you choose to stay, I encourage you to learn each other's names and to pay attention to the timer in the corner of your screen so that everyone gets a chance to share. And with that, we close. Go in resilience, growing in strength. Go in strength, connected to all that is. Go in peace, knowing that we embrace each other, even now, from a distance.